I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get like this, especially not during something as personal and brutal as battling cancer. You spend months feeling weak, hanging on by a thread, and all the while you think you're just fighting to stay alive. Then, just when I thought I'd finally get a break, I found something that turned my world upside down. It started a few days before my surgery. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, trying to focus on anything other than the pain in my chest, when my phone buzzed. I'd been ignoring most messages, tired and worn out, but this one caught my eye because of the name at the top, my brother. His name looked normal enough, but I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. Still, I hesitated before unlocking the screen. The message was from him, just a short, innocent-looking "can't wait to see you tonight." But what made my stomach drop was the timestamp, an hour before I was supposed to go into surgery. I froze. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. Was he really just meeting up for a beer, or was there something more than I saw it? A string of texts hidden deep in the conversation. They were from her, my wife, and they weren't just friendly. They were intimate, flirtatious, almost desperate. I could feel my hands trembling as I scrolled through. The words burned into my eyes. "Can't wait to be with you again. Miss you so much," and even a few love yous that made my stomach churn. My wife had been cheating on me with my own brother. I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe it was some sick joke, a misunderstanding, but I knew better. The physical evidence was right there, screenshots of their messages, saved in a hidden folder I'd never seen before, and a few blurred photos of her and him together, clearly more than just friends. My chest tightened. My fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever, my mind racing. How could she do this? How could she betray me like that, especially while I was fighting for my life? The betrayal cut deeper than the cancer. It was a blow I wasn't prepared for, and I felt my throat tighten with a fresh wave of anger, betrayal, and a sense of utter helplessness. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I couldn't do it right then. Not when I was fragile, barely holding myself together with IV lines and painkillers. So I did the only thing I could. I kept the evidence, hid my phone, and decided to wait. Wait until I was strong enough to face it head on. That night, lying in my hospital bed, I replayed everything, their words, their secret smiles, the way my brother's name kept echoing in my mind like a punch to the gut. I could feel cold sweat forming on my forehead, my palms slick with anxiety. How long had this been going on? Would I ever be able to trust again? I didn't have answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't going to just blow over. No way. The day of my surgery arrived faster than I expected. I was drugged up, numb to most things, but the betrayal haunted me. As they wheeled me into the operating room, I remember thinking, this isn't just about fighting cancer anymore. This is about fighting for myself, for my dignity, and for the truth I'd uncovered. Once I was out, I knew I had to plan. I had to decide what I was going to do with that evidence. Because if I let this go, I was signing up for a lifetime of doubt and pain, and I was done being the victim. I wasn't sure exactly how, but I knew I'd get my revenge. I just needed to figure out how to do it in a way that would hit her where it hurt without spiraling into chaos. The thing is, I don't forgive easily, especially not after something like this. I've always believed that trust is the foundation of any relationship, and once that's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. I was about to find out exactly how deep her betrayal ran, and what I was willing to do to make her regret it. I just hope I'm ready to follow through. The first few days after my surgery were a blur of pain, medication, and a million thoughts spinning inside my head. I was trying to focus on recovery, getting my strength back, dealing with the physical toll, but the betrayal kept gnawing at me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her and my brother together, their secret smiles, the way they looked at each other like they shared a private joke. It was clear I couldn't trust her anymore. Not even a little bit. The whole foundation of what I believed in was shattered, and I was numb, like I'd been punched in the gut and left there to bleed out. I knew I needed a plan, something to make her feel the weight of what she'd done. But I also didn't want to be impulsive. Revenge, I learned, is a tricky game. It has to be precise, calculated, and served cold. One afternoon, I sat in my hospital bed, my laptop propped up on the bed tray. I stared at the screen, trying to decide my next move. I had the evidence, screenshots, the messages, the photos. It was all I needed. But what now? Do I blow everything up in one go? Do I confront her directly? The idea of her lies, her betrayal, was like a stone in my stomach. Every breath felt heavy, every heartbeat a reminder that I'd been played for a fool. And then I remembered something I'd read about. Revenge, how it's less about hurting others and more about regaining your control. I've been powerless during my treatment, vulnerable and weak, but now I had a weapon. That was my leverage. I started to craft a plan, one that would make her regret every lie, every stolen moment. First, I needed to understand her habits, where she went, who she talked to, anything that could give me an edge. I installed a basic tracking app on her phone, which I knew was risky but necessary. I didn't plan to do anything reckless, just enough to gather information. I wanted her to feel watched, to realize I knew everything. Next, I contacted a private investigator I knew from years back, someone discreet, trustworthy. I didn't want to do this alone. I had no idea how far she'd go or how deep her lies ran. I only knew I had to make damn sure I caught her in the act one more time before I made my move. While I waited for the intel to come in, I kept myself busy. I reread those texts, looking for any clues I might have missed. I touched the scar on my chest, feeling the dull ache, and reminded myself, this feeling of betrayal is just another wound. I'll heal, but I'll also make her pay. One night I caught her sneaking out of the house. She was careful, quick, trying to avoid being seen. I knew she was planning something, maybe to meet him again or to hide her tracks better. My stomach clenched, anger, disappointment, betrayal, all rolled into one. I felt my fists tight. It's one thing to be betrayed, it's another to be made a fool of. The next day I confronted her. It was a cold, calculated conversation. I threw the evidence in her face, watching her eyes flicker with guilt and panic. "So this is what you've been hiding," I said, voice low and steady. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Her face paled, but she tried to deny it, to spin some story, but I wasn't buying it. Her words were weak, full of excuses I'd heard 100 times before. I saw the fear in her eyes. She knew she'd crossed a line, but it was too late now. I told her I was planning my revenge, that she'd regret ever betraying me. Her tears and pleas meant nothing. I was already planning my next move, the one that would hit her where it hurt the most. That night I set everything in motion. I contacted my investigator to gather more evidence, proof of her meetings, her lies, and I prepared my final plan. I wanted her to know I was serious. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity and making sure she understood exactly how much she'd lost. Lying in bed that night, I felt a strange mixture of relief and rage. I had the evidence, I had the plan, and I had my resolve. No more tears, no more pretending. I was done being the victim. Now I was taking control. The pieces were in place, and I was ready to make her regret every second she ever betrayed me. I just hope she's ready for what's coming. In the days that followed, I kept myself busy but restless. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the way her eyes flickered with guilt when I confronted her, and I felt the surge of anger rising again. I had everything I needed: photos, messages, the investigators' reports. Now it was just a matter of timing. I wasn't going to rush things. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her betrayal, to see it coming like a freight train. I arranged to meet with my investigator in a quiet, secluded location. I needed to be sure of everything, proof that she was still sneaking around, that she hadn't figured out I was onto her. My plan was simple but ruthless. Catch her red-handed, then expose her once and for all. No messy confrontations, no shouting matches. Just cold, undeniable evidence that would leave her no way out. That evening I sat in a small on the edge of town, waiting for him. The air was thick with the scent of roasted coffee beans and stale smoke from nearby smokers. My palms were sweaty and my stomach felt queasy. I kept replaying the last conversation with her in my head, the way her voice cracked when she tried to deny everything. I clenched my fists, feeling the familiar ache in my chest, and told myself, this ends tonight. The investigator arrived with a folder thick with photos, recordings, and notes. He slid it across the table and leaned in. "Everything in there," he said softly. "She's definitely meeting him. Last night they had a dinner at that new Italian place downtown. I got footage of her leaving around midnight looking tense but happy. They're definitely hiding something. I looked through the evidence, my heart pounding. I saw her face in the photos, her eyes darting around, her posture tense like she was trying to hide something. Next, there was a recording of her whispering on the phone saying, "Tonight's the night we finally end this." I felt my jaw tighten. This wasn't just some fling, this was premeditated, deliberate betrayal. I nodded at the investigator. "Good, that's enough for now. Keep everything secure. I want to be ready to strike when the time is right." I closed the folder and stared out the window, feeling a strange calm settle over me. I had the evidence. I had my plan. Now all I needed was the perfect moment. Over the next few days, I monitored her movements closely. I learned her routines, her favorite coffee shop, the places she liked to go when she thought no one was watching. Every detail was another piece of my puzzle. I could almost taste the victory knowing I was in control of the situation, even if I was still in pain physically and emotionally. One night I came home early from a doctor's appointment. The house was quiet, but I knew she was out. I followed her discreetly, my heart beating faster with every step. She was meeting him again, this time at a small, dimly lit bar. I stayed outside, watching through the window. They seemed comfortable, leaning in close, whispering. She handed him something, a folded piece of paper. That was my signal. I pulled out my phone, ready to record everything. I hadn't decided whether I'd confront her then and there or wait for the perfect moment to expose her. Either way, I knew she was caught. The betrayal was no longer just a suspicion. It was concrete, undeniable. As I watched her and my brother laughing and clinking glasses, I felt a strange mix of rage and relief. Rage that she'd betrayed me at my most vulnerable, and relief because I finally had the upper hand. I understood now that revenge isn't about hurting someone just for the sake of it. It's about reclaiming what was stolen, making them see they can't get away. When I finally went back inside that night, I sat on the couch, staring at the evidence on my phone. My fingers curled into fists. I was ready. Ready to confront, ready to end this charade, and most of all, ready to move on from this nightmare she dragged me into. The moment was coming. I could feel it in my bones. And once I made my move, everything would change. I just had to wait for the right time to strike. They'd regret ever crossing me. I knew that much. The waiting was the hardest part. Every day, I'd check my phone, rewatch the recordings, look at the photos. I'd replay every detail, trying to figure out the perfect moment to strike. The more I watched her with him, the clearer it became. This wasn't just some secret fling. It was calculated, deliberate, a betrayal that cut deep into what I thought was our life together. One evening, I sat on my couch, the evidence displayed on my phone screen. My stomach twisted with a mixture of adrenaline and nausea. I was ready to end this. The plan was simple: expose her for who she really was, make her face the consequences of her lies, and end whatever fake relationship she thought she had with my brother. I had already contacted my lawyer, just to get some advice on how to handle the legal side of things if needed. But I knew this was mostly about making her see that she couldn't get away with it, no matter how long she'd been sneaking around or how good she thought she was at hiding it. She came home late that night, as usual. The house was silent, my heart pounding in my chest. I pretended to be asleep, watching her through the doorway as she tiptoed in, trying to avoid making any noise. She brushed her hair back nervously, her movements tense. I got up slowly, my muscles stiff from the medication, and approached her. "We need to talk," I said, voice low but firm. She froze, eyes wide with guilt. "What's there to talk about?" she asked, trying to act innocent. I pulled out my phone, holding it in front of her. "Don't play dumb. I saw everything. The messages, the meetings, you're done." Her face paled. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I cut her off. "You've been lying, sneaking around, cheating on me with my own brother. Do you even realize how much you've hurt me, how much you've torn apart the little trust I had left?" Her voice trembled as she tried to explain. "It's not what it looks like. I swear I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Save it," I interrupted. "You've been caught, and I've got more evidence. I'm not interested in your excuses anymore. I want you to leave. You've betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. I want you out of my house, and I want you gone for good." She looked like she was about to cry, but I was too angry for sympathy. I handed her a bag, pointed to the door, and told her to pack her things. "You've got 10 minutes. Don't come back. Not now, not ever. When she finally left, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. It was like I'd just finished fighting a war I didn't even know I was in. Her betrayal had shattered everything I believed in, but at least now I had some clarity. The person I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I couldn't recognize. The house was finally quiet. I sat down and stared at the evidence I'd collected: screenshots, recordings, her messages. I realized I needed to do more than just throw her out. I needed her to pay, make her understand that she'd lost everything, that her betrayal had consequences. That night, I formulated my revenge. Not petty revenge, but something that would leave her with no doubt about what she'd thrown away. I decided to leak some of the evidence to her friends and family to show everyone what kind of person she was. The truth was, I wanted her to feel exposed, humiliated, and powerless, just as I felt when I discovered the truth. I also contacted her workplace, handed over some of the proof, and explained the situation. I wanted her to lose her job if possible, or at least face the repercussions of her actions. It was a calculated move, designed to make her regret ever crossing me. The following day, I felt a strange sense of calm. I was finally taking back control. She'd betrayed me, and now I was making sure she paid. I didn't want her to think she'd gotten away with it. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences, and I was the one who was going to deliver them. As I sat in my living room watching the fallout begin, I knew this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming myself, my dignity, and my peace of mind. She might have thought she could get away with it, but I was about to show her just how wrong she was. She'd regret ever hurting me, every single moment, and I was going to make sure she never forgot it. The aftermath hit harder than I expected. Word spread fast: her family, her friends, her. It was like I'd dropped a bomb, only I hadn't done it out of malice. I did it to make her face what she'd done. Her reputation was crumbling, and I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, though it was tinged with bitterness. I knew this was just the beginning of my revenge. She called me that evening, voice trembling, trying to sound composed. "Please, can we talk?" I didn't mean for everything to get so out of hand. I didn't bother to hide my hostility. "There's nothing left to say. You betrayed me in the worst way. You think I'm just going to forgive and forget? No, you lost everything: my trust, our marriage, your reputation. And honestly, I don't know if I'll ever trust again." Her voice cracked. "I love you. I made a mistake. Can't we just—" "You made a choice," I interrupted sharply. "One that destroyed what we had. I don't want to hear your apologies. I want you to understand that you can't just cheat and walk away. You had a good life with me, and you threw it all away for what? A secret affair with my brother." She hesitated, then whispered, "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't think it would go this far." That's when I realized something. I had to make her understand the full weight of her betrayal, not just through words, but through actions. I wanted her to feel the loss and regret, to see how deep her betrayal cut into everything I had. I hung up, and for the first time since my diagnosis, I felt a flicker of clarity amid the chaos. I was done being the victim. I had to act decisively now. It was time to make her see that her choices had consequences, and I would be the one to enforce them. Over the next few days, I prepared the final part of my plan. I drafted a letter, not just to her but to everyone she knew, exposing her lies, her betrayal, and her affair. I wanted her to lose the support system she took for granted, to see that she couldn't hide behind her lies anymore. It was brutal but necessary. I also arranged to get her out of the house permanently. I made sure her belongings were packed and ready to go, set a date to hand her the keys, and told her she'd have to find a new place. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her actions, not just emotionally but practically too. It wasn't just about ending us. It was about making her understand she'd lost her life as she knew it. One evening, I drove to her workplace, handed over the evidence I'd collected, and explained everything. The look on her boss's face after I laid it all out was priceless. She was asked to leave immediately, her reputation shredded beyond repair. I didn't do it out of malice, well, maybe a little, but I did it because I knew she never truly understood the depth of her betrayal until it hit her right where it hurt most. That night, I handed her the final set of keys. She looked at me like I was the devil incarnate, tears streaming down her face. I didn't say much, just looked her in the eyes and said, This is what happens when you betray someone who loved you. You lost everything because you couldn't keep your promises. As she packed her things and left, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I'd won, but at what cost? I was stronger now, but I also knew I'd carry the scars of this betrayal forever. Still, I was determined to rebuild and move forward. In the quiet that followed, I sat alone with the evidence, the memories, and the pain. I realized that revenge isn't about hurting someone just because they hurt you. It's about reclaiming your power, making them see what they've lost. I was still healing physically from my cancer, but emotionally, I was finally starting to feel like I was regaining control of my life. My advice to anyone in a similar situation: don't let betrayal slide. Confront it head on, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to do what's necessary to protect yourself. Sometimes the only way to heal is to make sure the person who hurt you understands they've lost everything. And if you're the one betrayed, remember, your strength lies in how you respond, not in how badly you've been hurt. The days that followed were the hardest, but also the clearest. I finally felt the weight lift, knowing I'd done everything I could to reclaim my life. Moving out of the house, I handed over the keys, leaving behind a place that once held promises, promises that she shattered with her lies. I felt hollow, yet oddly lighter, like I'd finally taken back what was mine, piece by piece. I spent those nights in quiet solitude, reflecting on everything: the pain, the betrayal, the revenge. It wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about standing up for myself when I'd been knocked down. I'd been sick, vulnerable, and betrayed, but I refused to let that define me. I realized I'd learned something invaluable. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. But I also learned that I had the power to rebuild, to set boundaries, and to protect my peace. Looking back, I see how much I underestimated my strength. I thought I was just fighting to survive cancer, but I was also fighting to survive betrayal, something just as corrosive, just as deadly. The experience changed me, but it also made me realize my worth. I don't regret what I did, because I knew I had to do it, to stop her from hurting me further, to take control of my narrative. To those who find themselves in similar situations, here's what I want to say: don't ignore the signs. If someone you love is hiding things, if you suspect betrayal, confront it early. Gather your evidence, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to take decisive action. The pain will be immense, but in the end, your dignity and peace are worth it. As I sit here now, finally free, I understand that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to live with what's happened and moving forward stronger. Life will throw curveballs, sometimes brutal ones, but resilience is born from how you respond, not from avoiding the hits. I've learned that revenge, when done right, isn't about hurting someone just to hurt them. It's about reclaiming what you lost, about making the other person see that their actions have consequences. It's about standing tall when everything else feels like it's crumbling. I've moved on, not just because I want to, but because I have to, for myself. So if you're in a situation where trust has been broken, remember, you hold the power. Stand up, face the truth, and do what's necessary to protect your peace. You might get hurt, but you'll also come out stronger. And in the end, that's all that matters.